What is the true measure of a person? Is it the number in their bank account, the brand of their suit, or the power they wield? For billionaire Arthur Vance, a man who could buy entire cities, the answer was a crushing, empty void. He had everything yet. He had nothing. So he did the unthinkable. He vanished. Shedding a life of unimaginable luxury, he sought refuge in the one place no one would ever look for him: poverty. He wanted to find one person, just one, who would see a man, not a wallet. He found her in a greasy spoon diner, and what she did would unravel his entire world. The rain fell on the streets of Seattle with a kind of relentless grey melancholy that mirrored the soul of Arthur Vance. For 6 months since his wife Eleanor had passed, this had been his world, a muted palette of grief and silence inside a mansion that felt more like a mausoleum. The staff tiptoed around him. His children called with voices full of strained, dutiful concern, and his board of directors spoke of stock prices and quarterly earnings, words that sounded like a foreign language from a life he no longer recognized. He was the founder and CEO of Vance Innovations, a titan of sustainable technology whose net worth was a headline-grabbing number. He owned penthouses in 3 continents, a fleet of cars he never drove, and a watch that cost more than the average house. And in the cavernous echo of his life, he was utterly, crushingly alone. The smiles he received were transactional, the kindnesses calculated. He felt like a ghost, haunting his own life, visible only for his wealth. One Tuesday the hollowness became unbearable. He looked at his reflection in the black marble of his fireplace, a tired man in a $1,000 cashmere sweater, and made a decision. He would conduct an experiment. He would shed Arthur Vance, the billionaire, and become Art a Nobody. He went to a second-hand store in a part of town his driver would actively avoid and bought a new identity: a worn tweed jacket with frayed cuffs, scuffed leather shoes, and a pair of trousers that had long since lost their shape. He left his Rolex in a drawer, along with his platinum credit cards, and took out only a few crumpled bills. His destination was a small, unassuming diner called the Corner Spoon. It was the kind of place that smelled of old coffee and frying bacon, a relic of a bygone era. He took a seat in booth, for the vinyl cracked beneath him, and waited. For an hour he was invisible. The other waitresses breezed past him, their eyes scanning for tables with more promise for customers who didn't look like they were nursing a single coffee for the entire afternoon. But then a young woman with tired, intelligent eyes and a name tag that read Claire stopped at his table. "Sorry for the wait," she said, her voice warm despite the weariness etched on her face. "It's been one of those days. Can I get you something to start? The soup's hot and the coffee's fresh." "Just coffee, please," Arthur mumbled, keeping his eyes down. She returned with a steaming mug. "Here you go. Let me know if you need anything else, Art." He looked up surprised. He hadn't introduced himself. He then realized he had brought an old dog-eared copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and tucked inside the cover was an old library card with his chosen pseudonym, Art Jensen. Peeking out, she had noticed the detail. It was a small thing, but it was the first time in months anyone had seen a detail about him that wasn't attached to a dollar sign. He watched her for the next hour. She moved with a practiced efficiency, refilling coffees, taking orders, and cleaning spills. She treated a table of boisterous construction workers with the same cheerful respect as she did a fussy elderly woman complaining about the temperature of her tea. Arthur saw her manager, a sour-faced man named Mr. Davis, berate her for dropping a fork. She simply apologized, picked it up, and carried on her smile, never quite vanishing, though it did dim for a moment. Later, Arthur saw her slip her own untouched sandwich into a takeaway box for a homeless man huddled outside, whispering a kind word to him before hurrying back in. When it was time to leave, Arthur left a $5 bill for his $2 coffee. As he was putting on his thin jacket, Claire rushed over. "So you left too much," she said, holding out the change. Arthur was taken aback. "It's a tip, but it's more than the coffee itself," she stammered, a blush rising on her cheeks. "You don't have to." "You were kind," Arthur said, his voice raspy with disuse. "Kindness should be rewarded." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Sir, your jacket, it has a tear in the sleeve. The wind out there is nasty. If you have a minute, I have a little sewing kit in my locker. I could put a quick stitch in it for you. Won't take long." Arthur Vance, the man whose suits were tailored in Milan, stood motionless. He looked at the small tear in his second-hand coat, then back at this young woman, offering a simple, unprompted act of human decency. She expected nothing. She didn't know he could buy the entire city block the diner stood on. She just saw an old man with a torn coat on a cold day. "Yes," Arthur said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. "Thank you. I'd like that very much." As she expertly mended the worn fabric with steady fingers, Arthur knew his experiment had yielded its first and perhaps most important result. In a world of glittering falsehoods, he had found a flicker of something real in booth 4 of the Corner Spoon. Arthur, or Art. As he was now known to Claire, made the Corner Spoon his new sanctuary. Every day he would arrive at 2 p.m. after the lunch rush and sit in booth 4. He would read his book, drink his coffee, and watch the small world of the diner revolve around its quiet, compassionate center, Claire Mayhew. Their conversations started small. She would ask about his book. He learned she was an aspiring artist, a painter. Her dream was to one day have her work shown at the Trava Gallery downtown, but for now her canvases were the back of order pads, where she sketched customers in fleeting charcoal strokes. "I see things in faces," she told him one afternoon, showing him a quick sketch of the grumpy manager, Mr. Davis. She had captured not just his perpetual scowl, but a deep-set sadness in his eyes that Arthur had never noticed. "Everyone's got a story. You just have to be willing to look long enough to read it." Arthur felt a pang of recognition. That was precisely what he was doing, trying to find someone willing to read his story without seeing the gilded cover. He began to learn pieces of her story. She was working double shifts to support herself and her younger brother Leo, who was 10. Leo had severe asthma, and the costs of his medication and inhalers were a constant crushing weight. Her parents were gone, and it was just the two of them. Yet she never complained. She spoke of Leo's love for astronomy and her dream of buying him a real telescope with a kind of fierce, protective love that humbled Arthur. One day, Arthur accidentally left a $50 bill on the table. A few minutes after he'd left the diner, his phone, a cheap prepaid device he'd bought for his disguise, buzzed. It was an unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Art, it's Claire from the diner." Her voice was hesitant. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I got your number from the contact card you left on the table yesterday. You said in case of a medical emergency. Anyway, you left $50. I know you didn't mean to. I have it here for you for when you come in tomorrow." Arthur closed his eyes. He could have ended all her financial worries with a single phone call, a flick of his pen. But that would make him Arthur Vance again. Art couldn't do that. And more importantly, he knew she would be horrified, not grateful. Her pride and integrity were as much a part of her as her kindness. "Claire," he said gently, "I have no family. I'm an old man on a fixed pension. That money, I was saving it for something special, but I believe I've found it. Please, use it for your brother. Buy him a new book about the stars. Consider it a gift from one friend to another." There was a long silence on the other end. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "No one's ever—" "Thank you, Art." "Really?" Their bond deepened. He wasn't just a customer anymore. He was her confidant. She would tell him about her frustrations with a new painting, how the color of the evening sky over Puget Sound was impossible to capture. He, in turn, would share heavily edited stories of his life, speaking of his late wife Eleanor, not as the philanthropic socialite the world knew, but simply as the woman he loved, who had a passion for gardening. "She would have liked you," Arthur told Claire one day, the admission surprising even himself. She knew how to see the person, not the pretense. Claire smiled, a genuine, radiant thing that lit up her tired face. "Well, there's not much pretense to a retired librarian, is there?" she joked. The lie stung more than he expected. The contrast between his two lives was becoming increasingly jarring. In the evenings, he would return to his sterile mansion. His son Justin would call from New York, his voice sharp and impatient. "Father, the board needs you to sign off on the Tokyo acquisition, and I've arranged for you to attend the Children's Hospital Gala on Saturday. It's important we show a united front. People are starting to talk about your reclusiveness." "I'm not interested, Justin," Arthur would say. "Not interested. Father, this is our legacy. This is Vance Innovations." "You can't just check out. What on earth are you doing all day?" "I'm reading," Arthur would reply, which was not a lie, merely a fraction of the truth. Justin would sigh, a sound of pure exasperation that crackled over the phone line. To his son, Arthur was an asset becoming negligent, a machine beginning to malfunction. To Claire, he was Art, a friend, a quiet old man with a story in his eyes. One rainy afternoon, Arthur arrived at the diner, soaked to the bone. He had chosen to walk, to feel the cold and the damp, to feel anything. He was shivering when he sat down. Without a word, Claire brought him not coffee, but a steaming bowl of tomato soup. "On the house," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "You need to take better care of yourself, Art. You'll catch your death." He ate the soup, the warmth spreading through him. It was simple, unrefined, and the most satisfying meal he had eaten in a decade. He looked at Claire, who was now sketching furiously on a napkin. "What are you drawing?" he asked. She hesitated, then turned the napkin around. It was a sketch of him, but not as the world saw him. She hadn't drawn a billionaire or a beggar. She had drawn a man lost in thought, a book in his hand, with a profound loneliness in his posture, but a flicker of hope in his gaze as he looked out the window. She had captured the very essence of his secret pilgrimage. She had seen him, truly seen him. And in that moment, Arthur Vance knew his carefully constructed experiment was becoming dangerously real. He was no longer just observing, he was becoming attached, and he knew with a certainty that chilled him more than the rain that attachments built on a foundation of lies were destined to shatter. Justin Vance operated on a diet of ambition and control. He was the heir apparent to the Vance empire, a man groomed from birth to navigate boardrooms and hostile takeovers. He saw life as a series of strategic moves, and his father's recent behavior was a dangerously erratic play. This wasn't grief, this was an abdication of duty. His father was missing meetings, ignoring calls, and refusing to engage with the multi-billion-dollar legacy Justin was working tirelessly to expand. The final straw came when Arthur missed the annual Vance Foundation Gala, the philanthropic cornerstone of their public image, an event his mother had cherished. "He's not well," Justin said to his sister Evelyn over a video call. Evelyn, a marine biologist living in California, was more empathetic. "He's grieving, Justin. Give him space." "Space. He's disappearing for 8 hours a day. I had security track his car. He drives to a public garage, leaves his Mercedes, and then just vanishes. This isn't space, Ev. This is a breakdown. Or worse." Justin's mind, always racing towards the worst-case scenario, landed on a terrifying possibility. His father, vulnerable and disoriented by grief, was being manipulated. A predator, a charlatan, someone who had sniffed out the scent of a wounded billionaire. He did what he always did when faced with a problem he couldn't control. He threw money at it. He hired a private investigator, a discreet but ruthless man named Mr. Klein, whose specialty was uncovering the unsavory secrets of the wealthy. "Find out where my father goes, who he's with, what he's doing," Justin instructed, his voice cold as steel. "I want photos. I want everything." A week later, a manila envelope landed on Justin's mahogany desk in his New York office. The contents made his blood run cold. Inside were high-resolution photographs of his father, Arthur Vance, a man who wore hand-stitched Xenia suits, dressed in what Justin could only describe as rags. He was sitting in a cheap-looking diner, talking to a young waitress. Klein's report was clinical and damning. Subject Arthur Vance has adopted the alias Art Jensen, spends approximately 4 to 6 hours daily at the Corner Spoon Diner. Primary association is with a waitress, Claire Mayhew, 26. Single, no criminal record. Sole guardian of a minor brother with chronic health issues. Lives in a low-income apartment in the Rainier Beach area. Justin stared at the photos of Claire. She was smiling at his father, her head tilted in a way that seemed intimate, caring. In one shot, she was touching his father's arm. To an outsider, it was a gesture of simple warmth. To Justin, it was the calculated move of a predator, sinking her claws into his family's fortune. A young, struggling waitress with a sick brother. It was a textbook gold digger's sob story. His father, the brilliant strategist, had become a pathetic old fool, taken in by the first pretty face, who showed him a sliver of sympathy. The anger burned in Justin's chest, hot and righteous. He wasn't just protecting his inheritance, he was protecting his father from his own senility. He booked the next flight to Seattle. He didn't go to the mansion. He went straight to the Corner Spoon. He sat in his tailored suit in a booth across from his father's usual spot and waited. When Arthur walked in, dressed in his pauper's costume, Justin felt a wave of disgust and pity. He watched as the waitress Claire immediately greeted his father with a bright smile and a fresh pot of coffee. He saw the easy camaraderie between them, the way his father's entire posture relaxed in her presence. It was a familiarity that confirmed all his worst fears. He waited until his father left. Then he approached the counter where Claire was tallying receipts. "Claire Mayhew?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but it carried an unmistakable edge of authority. Claire looked up, her smile faltering slightly, as she took in his expensive suit and severe expression. "Yes, can I help you? I'm here about art," Justin said, watching her face for a reaction. He saw a flicker of concern. "Good. Is he all right?" she asked immediately. "He seemed a bit down today." Justin gave a cold, humorless laugh. "Oh, he's far from all right, and I think you know that. Tell me, what's your game? How much is he paying you to be his companion?" Claire's jaw dropped. She stared at him, her face a mixture of confusion and offense. I don't know what you're talking about. Art is my friend. He's a lonely old man. I don't take any money from him." "Oh, please," Justin sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "Spare me the Florence Nightingale act. A girl like you working in a place like this with a sick little brother, I hear. It's a very sad story. How much did you have to embellish it to get him hooked?" The colour drained from Claire's face, replaced by a flush of anger. "You have no right," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "You don't know anything about me or about Art. He is a kind, decent man. Now I think you should leave." "I'll leave when I'm ready," Justin said, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Let me give you some advice. This ends now. Whatever fantasy you've cooked up, whatever payday you're hoping for, it's over. Stay away from him. If I see or hear that you've contacted him again, I will bring the full weight of my family's resources down on you. I will make sure you lose this job. I will bury you in legal fees until you can't even afford your brother's next inhaler. Do you understand me?" Tears welled in Claire's eyes, tears of humiliation and fury. She was just a waitress. He was a man who wielded power like a weapon. It was a fight she could never win. She could only nod a single sharp movement of her head. "Good," Justin said, straightening his tie. He threw a $100 bill on the counter. "For your trouble." He walked out, leaving Claire standing shell-shocked and trembling, the crisp bill lying on the counter like an insult. He had handled the problem. He had cut the cancer out before it could spread. He had saved his father. He was sure of it. But as he got into his waiting town car, he couldn't shake the image of the genuine hurt in the waitress's eyes. For a fleeting moment, a sliver of doubt pierced his armor of certainty. The day after Justin's visit, Art arrived at the diner to a world that was suddenly inexplicably cold. Claire was there, but she was different. The warm smile was gone, replaced by a tight professional politeness. She took his order, brought his coffee but avoided his gaze. The easy conversation that had become the bedrock of his days had vanished, leaving an awkward, painful silence. "Is everything all right, Claire?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "Everything's fine, sir." She replied the word sir, a slap in the face. She had never called him that before. "Will there be anything else?" She was already turning away, her shoulders tense. Art was bewildered and hurt. He replayed their last conversation, searching for anything he might have said or done to offend her. He found nothing. He left the diner that day, feeling the familiar, crushing weight of loneliness return heavier than ever. He didn't know that Claire had spent the entire night wrestling with Justin's threats, the ugly words echoing in her mind. Who was that man, Art's son? Why would he be so cruel? She felt a chilling fear that she had stumbled into something far more complex and dangerous than a simple friendship with a lonely old man. For Leo's sake, she knew she had to pull away. The risk was too great. The dynamic of their strained new reality was fuel on a fire for another observer. Mark Renshaw, Claire's ex-boyfriend, had been lurking on the periphery of her life for months. He was a fellow artist, but where Claire's art was born of empathy, Mark's was driven by ego. He was perpetually on the verge of being discovered, a state he used to justify his borrowing of money and his bitter jealousy of anyone who achieved success. Their relationship had ended when Claire finally grew tired of his manipulations and emotional vampirism. Mark often came by the diner near the end of her shift, hoping to charm or guilt his way back into her life, or at least into a free meal. From his vantage point at the end of the counter, he had watched the bizarre friendship between Claire and the old man blossom. He'd dismissed it at first, but then he noticed the way Claire's face lit up when Art walked in, and the paternal protective way the old man looked at her. He saw an opportunity. After watching Art leave the diner, dejected Mark cornered Claire as she was wiping down tables. Trouble in paradise, he said with a smirk. Your sugar daddy looks upset. He's not my sugar daddy, Mark, and it's none of your business. Claire snapped, her nerves already frayed. Oh, come on, Claire. An old guy in shabby clothes, spending all day in a diner. He's either homeless or he's got a secret. And the way he looks at you, I'm betting on the secret. Mark's eyes glinted with avarice. Who is he? Some rich, eccentric testing people. I've heard stories like that. He's a retired librarian named Art, and he's my friend. That's all, she said, her voice firm. But Mark was a predator who smelled weakness. Claire's distress, her sudden distance from the old man, and the appearance of the man in the expensive suit the day before Mark had seen just in leaving, all added up. Something was happening, and he was determined to be a part of it. His chance came a few days later. Arthur, desperate to understand what had happened, had written a short, heartfelt note to Claire, apologizing for whatever he had done and asking her to please talk to him. He'd tucked it into his copy of Meditations. During a moment when Claire was in the kitchen, Mr. Davis, the manager, barked at Arthur for taking up a booth without ordering more than a coffee. Humiliated, Arthur stood to leave, but in his haste, the book fell from his lap, and the note fluttered under the table unnoticed. After he left, Mark, who had been watching, sauntered over. He found the note and pocketed it. But as he bent down, something else caught his eye. Arthur's old worn wallet had also slipped from his jacket pocket. It was a simple leather wallet, part of his disguise. But Mark, driven by a toxic mix of curiosity and greed, couldn't resist. He snatched it up. Later, in his cluttered studio apartment, he opened the wallet. It contained a few small bills, the fake Art Jensen library card, and one other thing tucked into a hidden sleeve. It was a platinum credit card. The name embossed on it was not Art Jensen. It was Arthur Vance. Mark's hands trembled. He pulled out his phone and typed the name into a search engine. The screen lit up with photos of the man from the diner, though he looked different, powerful, confident, dressed in immaculate suits, standing beside politicians and celebrities. The headlines screamed his identity. Billionaire tech mogul Arthur Vance, the reclusive genius of Vance Innovations, net worth estimated at $50 billion. A slow, venomous smile spread across Mark's face. A retired librarian, a simple friend. Claire was either the most naive fool on the planet or the most brilliant actress he had ever met. He didn't care which. He now held all the cards. He had Arthur Vance's wallet. He had a heartfelt personal note. He had the truth. He could go to Vance and blackmail him. He could expose the whole charade to the media. Or he could do something far more deliciously cruel. He could use the truth to destroy the one thing of real value. He saw the bond between the billionaire and the waitress who had rejected him. He would be the hero saving Claire from the manipulative old liar, and in doing so, he would shatter her world, and maybe, just maybe, make her see how much she needed him. After all, the poison of his past with her was about to become the poison of her future. Arthur Vance was a man accustomed to solving problems. He could analyze market trends, anticipate technological shifts, and navigate complex international negotiations. But the simple human problem of Claire's sudden coldness was a puzzle he couldn't crack. Her polite distance was a wall he couldn't breach, and it was driving him to distraction. His experiment in authenticity had backfired. He had found a genuine connection, only to have it inexplicably severed. The turmoil was making him careless. Back in his real life, the life of boardrooms and financial reports, he was making mistakes. He missed a crucial detail in a preliminary report for the Tokyo acquisition. Justin had been pushing an error his old self would have caught in a heartbeat. It cost the company a significant negotiating advantage, and for Justin, it was the final irrefutable proof of his father's declining competence. Armed with this new failure and the PI's report, Justin flew back to Seattle for a second confrontation. This time, he went to the mansion. He found his father in the library, staring out the window, looking lost and old in his expensive clothes. The art persona seemed to cling to him even here. "We need to talk," Justin began, his voice devoid of warmth. "I know where you've been going. I know who you've been seeing." Arthur turned slowly. "What are you talking about?" "The corner spoon, the waitress, Claire Mayhew." Justin said, spitting the name out. "Father, this has to stop. You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing the family name. You're neglecting the company. The Tokyo deal is in jeopardy because you were too busy playing dress-up in some greasy spoon." Arthur's face hardened. "You had me follow. It wasn't a question. I did what I had to do." Justin's voice rose, filled with a frustration that had been simmering for months. "You're not yourself. This woman has gotten into your head. She's manipulating you, preying on your grief. I went to see her. I warned her off." The blood drained from Arthur's face. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The sudden coldness, the fear in Claire's eyes, her insistence on calling him Sir. It wasn't him she was afraid of. It was his son. "You did what?" Arthur's voice was a low, dangerous rumble. The frail art persona vanished, replaced in an instant by the formidable titan of industry Justin knew and feared. "You went to that diner. You threatened that young woman. I protected you. I protected this family." Justin shot back, momentarily taken aback by his father's ferocity. "You know nothing about her," Arthur thundered, taking a step forward. "She is a good, kind, honorable person, qualities you seem to have forgotten the meaning of. She showed me more genuine human decency in 2 months than I've seen from my own circle in 20 years, and you, in your arrogant, blind ignorance, went and terrorized her. She's a gold digger, Father. Can't you see it? She tried to give back a $3 tip because she thought I couldn't afford it." Arthur roared, the injustice of it all consuming him. "She mended my coat. She gave me soup because I was cold. She knows nothing about my money. All she knows is a lonely old man. You didn't protect me, Justin. You destroyed the one real thing I had left." The raw pain in his father's voice finally pierced Justin's self-righteous anger. He saw not a senile old man, but a profoundly lonely one. The confrontation left both men shaken, a chasm of misunderstanding gaping between them. Meanwhile, a different storm was gathering across town. Mark Renshaw was setting his plan in motion. He called Claire, his voice a syrupy blend of fake concern. "Claire, we need to talk. It's about art. I've found some things out. I'm worried about you. You're in danger." Claire, already on edge from her encounter with Justin and her strained interactions with art, felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. "What are you talking about, Mark?" "Not on the phone. Meet me at the diner tomorrow during your lunch break. It's important. I have proof." Claire reluctantly agreed. She didn't trust Mark, but the word danger resonated with the fear Justin had instilled in her. What had she gotten herself into? The next day she met Mark in a booth at the back of the diner. The place was bustling with the lunchtime crowd. "Okay, I'm here," she said curtly. "What is this about?" Mark leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with malicious excitement. "Your friend Art, the sweet, retired librarian. It's all a lie." He slid Arthur's wallet across the table. Claire frowned, recognizing it. "He lost this the other day." "Open it," Mark urged. "Look at the credit card." Claire's fingers trembled as she pulled out the gleaming platinum card. She read the name. Arthur Vance. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but it meant little to her. "So his name is Arthur," she said, confused. "Why would he lie about that?" Mark laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "Oh, Claire, you really are that naive, aren't you? You don't know who Arthur Vance is." He slid his phone across the table, a news article already open. It showed a picture of Art of Arthur at a gala, shaking hands with the governor. The headline read, "Vance Innovations pledges $100 million to Seattle Children's Hospital." Claire stared at the screen, her vision tunneled. The sounds of the diner, the clatter of plates, the murmur of conversations faded into a dull roar in her ears. Billionaire. $50 billion. Vance Innovations. The new tech campus being built downtown, the one everyone was talking about. It was him. Her quiet, lonely friend was one of the richest, most powerful men in the world. Every memory she had of him was instantly sickeningly reframed. His shabby clothes were a costume, his stories of a meager pension, a lie. Her kindness, her concern for him, mending his coat, giving him free soup, worrying over his $3 tip, it was all part of some perverse game he was playing. She felt like an insect under a microscope, a specimen in his twisted social experiment. The humiliation was a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. "He was playing you, Claire," Mark whispered, twisting the knife. "A sick game for a bored rich man," laughing at the poor little waitress. Tears streamed down her face, hot and silent. The hurt was so profound, so deep, it felt like a betrayal of her very soul. And at that exact moment, the bell above the diner door jingled. Arthur Vance, dressed as Art, walked in his face, etched with worry, determined to break through the wall between them and apologize for whatever his son had done. He saw her. He saw her tears, the phone in her hand, and the venomous, triumphant look on Mark's face. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and in her gaze he saw not the warmth and kindness that had been his refuge, but the shattered, accusing shards of a trust that had been utterly and irrevocably destroyed. The storm had broken. The moment stretched into an eternity. The bustling diner became a silent stage for the drama unfolding between the three of them. Arthur stood frozen by the door, the disguise of Art feeling like a suffocating shroud. Claire sat in the booth, the screen of Mark's phone illuminating the devastating truth, her face a mask of profound betrayal. Mark, the architect of the chaos, watched them both, a smug satisfaction curling his lips. "Well, well," Mark said loudly, ensuring the nearby tables could hear. "Speak of the devil, or should I say, Mr. Arthur Vance. Come to slum it with the common folk again." Heads turned. A murmur rippled through the diner. Mr. Davis, the manager who was at the register, looked over his eyes, widening in disbelief as he recognized the name. Arthur ignored him. His entire focus was on Claire. He took a step towards her booth, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Claire, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" she whispered, her voice cracking. The whisper carried more weight than a shout. "Explain what part of this was real. The torn coat, the sad stories about your pension. Was any of it real, or was I just entertainment for you?" "No, that's not. It wasn't like that." He stammered, his usual eloquence gone. He was no longer a CEO, just a man watching something precious crumble into dust. "He's a liar, Claire," Mark interjected, standing up to place a protective hand on her shoulder. She flinched away from his touch. A billionaire playing games with a regular person's life. It's disgusting. The commotion was escalating. A customer at a nearby table was discreetly filming on his phone. Mr. Davis, seeing his chance to ingratiate himself with a powerful figure, rushed over. "Mr. Vance, sir, what an honor to have you in my establishment. I am so sorry for the scene this vagrant is causing," he said, glaring at Mark, "and I assure you I had no idea my employee was harassing you." He turned on Claire. "You're fired, Mayhew, causing trouble bothering our distinguished clientele." Claire stared at him, dumbfounded. Fired in the midst of her world collapsing, she was now losing the one thing that kept her and Leo afloat. The injustice was staggering. "She did nothing." Arthur's voice boomed through the diner, silencing the crowd. The authority in his tone was absolute. "This is not her fault. It is mine." He turned to Davis, his eyes like chips of ice. "And you will not fire her. In fact, as of this moment, I am buying this building. Your new landlord will be in touch. I suggest you reconsider your management style." Davis's jaw went slack, his face turning a pasty white. But the grand gesture meant to protect Claire only made things worse. To her, it was just another display of the obscene power he had been hiding. He wasn't helping. He was brandishing his wealth, proving that he could solve any problem by simply buying it, proving that they were, and always had been, from two different universes. Just then, the diner door swung open again. It was Justin Vance. He had driven straight from the mansion, unable to let their argument stand, intending to try and understand his father. Instead, he walked into a public spectacle. He saw his father still in his ridiculous disguise, the weeping waitress, the sneering man beside her, and a diner full of onlookers. "Father, what in God's name is going on?" Justin demanded, striding into the heart of the chaos. Mark's eyes lit up. This was the man from the other day. The son. The final piece. "Justin Vance, I presume," Mark said smoothly, extending a hand that Justin ignored. "Mark Renshaw. I'm a friend of Claire's. I'm the one who uncovered your father's sick little game. He's been lying to this poor girl for months." Justin's face tightened. He looked from his father's pained expression to Claire's devastated one. The doubt he'd felt after their first encounter bloomed into full-blown certainty. He had been wrong. Terribly wrong. He had thought Claire was the predator, but now he saw the truth. His father's deception, however well-intentioned, had created this mess. And his own heavy-handed threats had only made it worse. Claire couldn't take it anymore. She was being discussed as if she wasn't even there. Her friendship, her kindness, her financial struggles, all of it had been twisted into a public melodrama by these powerful, manipulative men. She stood up her chair, scraping loudly against the floor. She looked at Mark with pure contempt. "You are not my friend, Mark. You're a vulture." She turned to Justin. "And you are a bully." Finally, her eyes rested on Arthur. The anger was gone, replaced by a hollow, aching sadness. "I mended your coat, Art," she said, her voice barely audible. "I thought you were a good man. I think I just wanted to believe that a man like you could exist. But you don't." She pushed past the tables, past the gawking customers, and ran out of the diner, leaving the three Vance men and the ruins of their secrets behind her. Arthur made a move to follow, but Justin put a hand on his arm. "Let her go, Father," Justin said quietly, his voice full of a regret that mirrored his father's. "We've done enough damage for one day." Arthur watched her disappear into the city crowd. The man who could have anything in the world had just lost the one thing he had come to realize he couldn't live without a waitress's simple, honest kindness. And he knew with a certainty that felt like a death sentence that it was a loss entirely of his own making. The aftermath of the diner scene was a quiet, suffocating fallout. The video taken by the customer went viral, a low-quality, shaky clip titled "Billionaire's Bizarre Double Life Exposed." The story was a flash in the pan for the media, a quirky human interest piece that was forgotten by the next news cycle. But for those involved, the wounds were deep and festering. Arthur returned to his mansion, but the ghost was no longer just him. It was the ghost of Claire, of their shared conversations, of a simple life he had touched and then shattered. The grand house had never felt more like a prison. The first step toward redemption came from an unlikely source. Justin sat with his father in the library, the silence between them heavy with unspoken apologies. "I was wrong, Father," Justin said, finally breaking the silence. "I saw a threat where there wasn't one. I saw a caricature of a gold digger, and I refused to see the person. I acted out of arrogance, and I am truly sorry. I threatened her. I'm the reason she pulled away from you. I helped create this disaster." It was the most genuine apology Arthur had ever received from his son. He looked at Justin, seeing not just his heir, but a man humbled by his own fallibility. "And I was wrong to lie, Justin," Arthur confessed. "I was so lost in my own pain, so desperate to find something real, I didn't consider the consequences of my deception. I built a friendship on a foundation of lies. It was destined to crumble. I hurt her more than anyone." The conversation was a turning point. For the first time since Eleanor's death, father and son weren't talking about business or duty, but about their own failings. It was a painful, necessary reckoning. Arthur knew apologies were not enough. He had to make things right, but he understood now that he couldn't use his money as a blunt instrument. That would only validate Claire's worst fears about him. His first action was to deal with the fallout he had created. He had his legal team draft a letter to Mr. Davis informing him that his lease would be terminated due to unprofessional conduct and wrongful dismissal of an employee. He then contacted the diner's owner and made a generous offer to buy the establishment, with one condition: the entire staff, except for Davis, would be retained at their current or better pay with full benefits. The Corner Spoon would not be closed or turned into some soulless franchise. It would be preserved a small monument to the place where he had found a piece of his humanity again. His next task was far more difficult, finding Claire. She had quit her job immediately after the incident and moved from her apartment, leaving no forwarding address. She had disconnected her phone number. She had, in effect, vanished. Arthur, the man with limitless resources, felt powerless. But Justin, wanting to atone, put Mr. Klein, the private investigator, on the task with a new mandate. "Find her. Be discreet. No intimidation. I just need to know that she and her brother are okay." It took Klein 2 weeks. He found her in a small rented room in Tacoma, an hour south of Seattle. She had taken a grueling night shift job at an industrial laundry facility to make ends meet while she looked for something better. Leo was staying with a neighbor while she worked. She was exhausted, but resolute, determined to land on her own feet. Arthur didn't send a car or a lawyer. He drove himself in a modest sedan, not his Rolls-Royce. He didn't go to her door. He went to a small community art gallery near her new home. He purchased the entire gallery space for 1 month. Then he sent a single, simple handwritten letter via a courier who was instructed to simply leave it at her door. The letter read, "Claire, there are no words to undo the hurt I have caused you. My deception was born of loneliness, not malice, but that is an explanation, not an excuse. I lied, and I broke your trust. For that, I am profoundly sorry. I never wanted to be Arthur Vance to you. I just wanted to be art, a man who was privileged to be your friend. In all my life, no one has shown me the kind of selfless generosity you did. You saw a man, not a myth, and I will be forever grateful. I know I cannot buy your forgiveness. It is not for sale, and I would not insult you by trying. But I hope in time you might accept a sincere apology and a gesture of true friendship. There is a small gallery, the Tacoma Art Collective, a few blocks from you. I have arranged for it to be your studio for the next year, all expenses paid. No strings attached. Consider it a gift, not from a billionaire, but from a retired librarian who believes the world needs to see your art. The keys are with the gallery owner. They are yours if you want them. If not, I will understand. Whatever you choose, I hope you and Leo are well. I wish you nothing but the peace and happiness you so freely give to others. Yours, Art. Claire read the letter a dozen times, her heart at war with itself. The hurt was still there, a raw, tender bruise. But the letter wasn't signed by a billionaire. It was signed by Art. It was the voice of the friend she had missed so dearly. A week later, Arthur received a small package. Inside was a charcoal sketch on a simple piece of paper. It was a drawing of Booth 4 at the Corner Spoon. The booth was empty, but a single ray of sunlight was streaming through the window, illuminating the table as if waiting for someone to return. There was no note. None was needed. It was the beginning. Not a fairy tale ending, but something more real. It was the start of a new kind of friendship, one built on a painful truth rather than a comfortable lie. Claire accepted the studio, and her art began to flourish, imbued with a new depth of emotion. Arthur, with Justin's help, started to reshape his company's philanthropic efforts, focusing on small, impactful community projects inspired by Claire's simple acts of kindness. He established a foundation in his late wife's name to provide free medical care and arts education for underprivileged children. The first recipient of a full-ride scholarship and comprehensive healthcare coverage was a young aspiring astronomer named Leo Mayhew. Arthur and Claire began to talk again, first in hesitant letters, then in phone calls. They met for coffee, not at the diner, but in a quiet park. He was no longer Art the librarian, and she was no longer just a waitress. He was Arthur, a man learning to be vulnerable, and she was Claire, an artist learning to trust again. Their connection, once shattered by a devastating revelation, was slowly, carefully being pieced back together, creating something stronger and more honest than before. They had learned that the greatest fortunes are not held in banks, but are measured in the currency of kindness, forgiveness, and the simple, priceless art of truly seeing one another. The story of Arthur and Claire reminds us of a powerful universal truth. The most valuable thing you can ever give someone is your kindness. It costs nothing yet. It is priceless. Arthur Vance had all the money in the world, but it couldn't buy him the genuine connection he so desperately craved. He had to shed his identity to find it, and he almost lost it all because of a lie. Their journey teaches us that integrity is the foundation of all true relationships, and that forgiveness is the bridge that allows us to find our way back to each other. It's a reminder that beneath the labels of rich or poor, powerful or humble, we are all just people searching for a place to feel seen and valued. If this story touched your heart, please let us know in the comments below. What did you think of Arthur's experiment? Could you forgive his deception? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video. If you found it meaningful, share it with someone who might need this message. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that explore the depths of the human spirit. Thank you for watching.
The millionaire noticed something strange. While everyone panicked during the robbery, the waitress stood calm, fearless. What happened next revealed she was no ordinary girl. Before we continue, I have to be straightforward. If you don't subscribe now, this might be the last time you see our content. The digital world can separate us unless you follow, comment, and share this video. Don't miss the chance to be part of our growing family. Now, let's delve into today's narrative. Alexander Thornfield adjusted his platinum Rolex as he surveyed the elegant dining room of Le Bernardin, his latest acquisition in Manhattan's restaurant empire. At 33, he'd built a hospitality conglomerate worth $3 billion, and tonight's inspection of his newest property was just another routine business matter. The Michelin-starred establishment hummed with quiet efficiency, crystal glasses catching the warm amber light from handcrafted chandeliers. "Everything appears to be running smoothly, Mr. Thornfield," his assistant whispered, but Alexander barely heard her. His attention had been captured by a young woman moving between tables with an unusual grace. Unlike the other servers who seemed nervous in his presence, this one carried herself with quiet confidence, her long black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, revealing delicate Asian features and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Maya Chen had noticed the intimidating man in the $1,000 suit the moment he'd entered with his entourage. She'd worked at Le Bernardin for 6 months, long enough to recognize when the owner was conducting one of his surprise visits. The other servers whispered nervously about Alexander Thornfield's reputation for perfectionism and his habit of firing people on the spot for minor infractions. But Maya had survived worse than demanding bosses. She'd learned long ago that keeping her head down and doing her job well was the key to staying invisible. "Excuse me." Alexander's voice cut through her thoughts as she balanced a tray of wine glasses. "You're handling those glasses like you've been doing this for years, but you don't move like someone who's been waiting tables her whole life." Maya paused, meeting his piercing blue eyes with steady dark ones. "I move like someone who needs this job, Mr. Thornfield. Is there something specific you need?" The directness of her response surprised him. Most employees either fawned over him or cowered in fear. This young woman did neither. "What's your name?" "Maya Chen, sir. I work the evening shift, table sections 12 through 18. How long have you been with us?" 6 months, 2 weeks, 3 days. The precision of her answer made him raise an eyebrow. "I pay attention to details, Mr. Thornfield. It's important in this line of work." Before Alexander could respond, the front door burst open with explosive force. 3 men in dark hoodies stormed into the restaurant, their faces partially concealed and their intentions immediately clear when one shouted, "Everyone on the ground, now!" Chaos erupted instantly. Diners screamed and dove under tables. Expensive glassware shattered against marble floors and servers dropped their trays in panic. Alexander's security detail started to move, but they were positioned near the kitchen entrance too far away to be immediately effective. Wallets, phones, jewelry, everything valuable in the bag. The leader, a man with dead eyes and a scar running down his left cheek, waved a pistol menacingly. "Any heroes tonight and people start dying." Alexander watched in fascination as Maya's entire demeanor shifted. While everyone else displayed various stages of terror, she became perfectly still, her breathing controlled, and her eyes tracking each gunman's position with mathematical precision. She'd moved slightly behind a marble pillar, partially concealed but with clear sight lines to all 3 assailants. "You pretty lady with the ponytail," the scarred leader called out, pointing his weapon directly at Maya. "Start collecting from these rich folks. Move." Maya stepped forward with her hands visible, but Alexander noticed something the gunman missed: her stance. Her feet were positioned in a way that suggested coiled energy, like a spring ready to release. Her center of gravity was lower than normal, and her breathing remained impossibly steady. "Of course," Maya said calmly, approaching the nearest table where an elderly couple sat trembling. "Just please don't hurt anyone." The gunman relaxed slightly, thinking he'd found a compliant helper. That was his first and last mistake. Maya moved with fluid precision that defied physics. In one seamless motion, she grabbed the edge of a marble-topped side table and spun it toward the leader, while simultaneously dropping low and sweeping the legs of the second gunman. The heavy table caught the leader in the midsection, sending him crashing into an ornate wine display. Before the third gunman could react, Maya had rolled behind the bar and launched herself over it in a spectacular aerial maneuver. Her foot connected with his wrist, sending his weapon flying, while her elbow found his solar plexus with surgical accuracy. He crumpled instantly. The second gunman tried to scramble for his dropped weapon, but Maya was already there. She delivered a precise strike to a pressure point on his neck, and he joined his accomplice in unconsciousness. The entire encounter had lasted less than 30 seconds. The restaurant fell into stunned silence. Maya straightened her uniform, checked her ponytail, and looked around at the debris with genuine concern. "I'm sorry about the mess," she said to Alexander, who stood frozen in amazement. "I know this will require extensive cleanup. Are you seriously apologizing for saving everyone's lives?" Alexander found his voice, though it came out rougher than intended. "I'm apologizing for the property damage," Maya replied, her professional mask sliding back into place. "The insurance paperwork alone will be a nightmare." Police sirens wailed in the distance as Alexander's security team finally reached them, looking sheepish and unnecessary. Alexander couldn't take his eyes off Maya, who was now helping the elderly couple back to their feet with gentle reassurance. "Where exactly did you learn to fight like that?" he asked, approaching her carefully. Maya's expression became guarded instantly. "YouTube videos," she said flatly. "Amazing what you can learn online these days." Alexander almost laughed at the obvious lie, but something in her eyes warned him away from pushing. "Right, YouTube." Mr. Thornfield, one of his security guards, interrupted. "The police want statements from everyone." "Should we?" "Handle it," Alexander said without looking away from Maya. "Make sure they know Ms. Chen is a hero, not a suspect." "I'm not a hero," Maya said quietly. "I'm just someone who reacts quickly in dangerous situations. It's not complicated." But it was complicated, Alexander realized. Everything about this woman was complicated. The way she moved suggested years of intensive training. Her situational awareness was military level. Her calm under pressure indicated experience with violence that no 22-year-old waitress should possess. "Have dinner with me," he said suddenly. Maya blinked in surprise. "Excuse me?" "Tomorrow night. Somewhere quiet, where we can talk without interruption. I'd like to know more about you, Mr. Thornfield. I don't think that's appropriate. You're my boss." "Actually, I'm your boss's boss's boss," Alexander said with a slight smile. "Which makes it even more inappropriate, but I'm asking anyway." "Why?" The simple question caught him off guard. Why was he asking? Because she intrigued him in ways he couldn't define. Because watching her fight had been the most exciting 30 seconds of his privileged life. Because she looked at him like he was just a man instead of a bank account with legs. Because in 33 years of living, I've never met anyone like you, he said honestly. Maya studied his face for a long moment, searching for signs of deception or hidden agenda. "I don't date customers, employers, or men who think they can collect interesting people like trophies." "Which category do I fall into?" "All three." Alexander laughed despite the rejection. "Fair enough, but what if I wasn't your employer?" "You'd still be a customer who thinks I'm some kind of trophy." "And if I promised not to treat you like a trophy?" Maya shook her head. "Mr. Thornfield, we live in completely different worlds. You own restaurants. I clean tables. You wear suits that cost more than my rent. I shop at thrift stores. You collect art. I collect tips. The math doesn't work. Math can be wrong. Not this kind of math." Alexander found himself genuinely frustrated for the first time in years. He was accustomed to getting what he wanted through charm, persistence, or simply writing checks. Maya Chen wasn't impressed by any of his usual tactics. "What would it take?" he asked. "For what?" "For you to have dinner with me." Maya was quiet for so long he thought she might ignore the question entirely. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, but no less determined. "It would take you being someone completely different than who you are, Mr. Thornfield. And since that's impossible, I suggest we both accept reality and move on." She walked away before he could respond, leaving Alexander standing among the broken glass and unconscious criminals. wondering why rejection from a waitress felt like the most significant thing that had happened to him in years. 3 days after the incident at Le Bernardin, Alexander found himself doing something unprecedented. Sitting in the employee break room of his own restaurant at 7 in the morning, nursing a cup of terrible coffee and pretending to review inventory reports. In reality, he was waiting for Maya's shift to begin so he could observe her in her natural environment. What he discovered challenged every assumption he'd made about her background. Maya arrived precisely 15 minutes before her shift, changed into her uniform with military efficiency, and immediately began reviewing the evening's reservations with a focus that bordered on academic. Alexander watched from the kitchen's service window as she memorized not just table numbers and guest preferences, but dietary restrictions, anniversary dates, and even the preferred wine selections of regular customers. She's something else, isn't she? Alexander turned to find Henri Dubois, Le Bernardin's head chef, standing beside him with a knowing expression. What do you mean? Maya. That's who you're watching, yes? I've been cooking for 30 years, Monsieur Thornfield, and I recognize precision when I see it. That girl approaches serving tables like a master chess player approaches a tournament. Alexander frowned. Chess player? She thinks 6 moves ahead. Watch her tonight during service. She anticipates needs before guests realize they have them. She knows which tables will order dessert based on their appetizer choices. She can predict when someone will need their wine glass refilled by their conversation patterns. It's remarkable. You think she's overqualified for this job? Henri laughed softly. I think she's overqualified for this planet. But whatever brought her here, she works harder than anyone else and never complains. The other servers respect her because she makes their jobs easier. As if summoned by their conversation, Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway. She moved with the same economical grace Alexander had noticed during the robbery, carrying herself like someone who owned every inch of space around her. Chef Dubois, I noticed Table 7 has dietary restrictions that aren't listed in our system. The reservation notes mention shellfish allergies, but the guest also mentioned avoiding gluten during their last visit. Should I flag this for tonight's service? Of course, thank you for catching that. Maya nodded and started to leave, but Henry called her back. Maya, have you met our owner, Mr. Thornfield? She turned, and Alexander saw the exact moment she spotted him. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture, a subtle defensive positioning that suggested she viewed him as a potential threat. We've met, she said carefully. Mr. Thornfield, is there something you need regarding tonight's service? Actually, yes. I'd like to discuss your background with the company. Your employment file seems unusually sparse. Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. I provided all required documentation when I was hired. You provided the minimum required documentation. Most employees include references, previous work experience, educational background. Your file contains a driver's license, social security card, and nothing else. Is there a problem with my work performance? Quite the opposite. Your work is exceptional, which makes your minimal background even more intriguing. Henri sensed the tension and quietly excused himself, leaving them alone in the kitchen. Maya remained perfectly still, but Alexander noticed her hands had unconsciously moved to a defensive position at her sides. Mr. Thornfield, I do my job well. I'm punctual, professional, and I don't cause problems. In most places, that's enough. This isn't most places. This is a 3-Michelin-star establishment where every employee undergoes extensive background screening. Then perhaps you should have screened me more thoroughly before hiring me. Alexander found himself smiling despite the obvious rebuff. You're doing it again. Doing what? Turning the conversation back on me instead of answering questions about yourself. It's a sophisticated deflection technique. Or maybe I just value my privacy. Privacy is one thing, mystery is another. The way you fought those men required years of professional training. Your knowledge of wine service suggests formal sommelier education. Your intuitive understanding of fine dining protocols indicates experience in establishments far above this level. And yet you work here as a server, live in a studio apartment in Queens, and act like you've never been anywhere or done anything interesting. Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying his face with those dark, unreadable eyes. "You've been investigating me. I've been trying to understand you. There's a difference?" "I think so. One comes from suspicion, the other from curiosity." "And which is this?" Alexander considered the question seriously. "Honestly? Both. The way you handled those gunmen was impressive but concerning. That level of skill doesn't come from casual self-defense classes. Maybe I'm just naturally coordinated, and maybe I'm naturally humble." We both know that's not true. Despite herself, Maya's lips quirked upward in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "You're asking me to trust you with personal information, but what exactly have you done to earn that trust?" "Fair point. What would it take? For starters, stop investigating my background. If you want to know something about me, ask me directly." "All right. Maya Chen, where did you learn to fight like that?" "My grandfather taught me." "Next question. Where?" "San Francisco's Chinatown next." "Why did you leave?" The almost smile disappeared entirely. "That's not a fair question." "Why isn't it fair?" "Because you're not ready for that answer, and I'm not ready to give it." Alexander felt himself being drawn deeper into the puzzle that was Maya Chen. Every answer she gave raised 3 new questions, and every defensive response made him more determined to understand what she was protecting herself from. "Have dinner with me tonight after service," then he said again. "Mr. Thornfield. Alex, just Alex, and not as your employer, as someone who finds you fascinating and wants to know more. Why is this so important to you?" The question stopped him cold. Why was it important? He dated models, actresses, heiresses, and brilliant businesswomen without feeling this level of compelling interest. What was it about Maya that made him want to break through her defenses? "Because I've spent my entire adult life surrounded by people who want something from me," he said finally. "Money, connections, social status, business opportunities. But you don't want anything. You actively discourage my interest. In my world, that's so rare it's practically extinct. Maybe I don't want anything because I've learned that everything comes with a price." "What if it doesn't?" "Everything does, Alex. The question is whether you're willing to pay it when the bill comes due." Before he could respond, Maya glanced at her watch and straightened her uniform. "I need to start my shift, if you'll excuse me." She walked away, leaving Alexander standing in the kitchen with the uncomfortable realization that he was pursuing someone who might be running from something far more serious than he'd imagined. But instead of deterring him, the thought only made Maya Chen more compelling. As the evening service began, Alexander positioned himself where he could observe Maya without being obvious about it. Henri had been right. She moved through the dining room like a grandmaster playing chess. She anticipated every need, solved problems before they became visible, and somehow managed to make a room full of demanding millionaires feel like they were her only priority. But it was the small details that captured Alexander's attention. The way she held wine bottles suggested formal training in prestigious establishments. Her conversation with a French businessman flowed effortlessly between English and French, with an accent that spoke of education, not just exposure. When an elderly Italian guest became confused about the menu, Maya switched to fluent Italian without missing a beat. Most telling of all was her interaction with a young couple celebrating their anniversary. The woman was clearly nervous, wearing a dress that had probably cost her a month's salary, intimidated by the elegant surroundings. Maya somehow made her feel comfortable without being condescending, recommending wines that complemented their budget while making the experience feel special rather than economical. "She's got 4 tables, 96 covers tonight, and every single guest thinks they're her favorite," Henri observed, appearing beside Alexander again. "That's not just skill, that's artistry. How does someone that talented end up waiting tables? Same way someone with your intelligence ends up buying restaurants instead of running countries, I suppose. Life is complicated, and people make choices for reasons that don't always make sense to outsiders." Alexander watched Maya deliver a perfectly timed dessert to table 12, while simultaneously catching the eye of a guest at table 15, who needed his wine glass refilled. She made it look effortless, but he could see the tremendous concentration required to orchestrate such seamless service. As the evening wound down, Alexander made his decision. He would wait for Maya after her shift ended, not to pressure her into dinner, but to offer something he'd never offered anyone before: complete honesty about why she intrigued him. What he didn't expect was to find her in the alley behind the restaurant at 1 a.m., practicing martial arts forms with deadly precision under the pale glow of security lights. Alexander stood frozen in the doorway, watching Maya move through what appeared to be an advanced kata with breathtaking fluidity. Her work uniform had been replaced by simple black clothing that allowed unrestricted movement, and her hair flowed loose around her shoulders as she executed techniques that were clearly lethal in their precision. She spun, kicked, struck invisible opponents with combinations that would have been devastating against real attackers. This wasn't casual practice. It was the disciplined training of someone maintaining skills that had taken years to develop. Every movement spoke of muscle memory earned through countless hours of repetition. Maya sensed his presence without breaking rhythm, completing her form before turning to face him with calm alertness. "Mr. Thornfield." "Working late?" "Alex," he corrected automatically. "And yes, apparently not as late as some people. I prefer to practice when there's no audience. How's that working out for you?" Despite herself, Maya smiled. "Not well, apparently." Alexander stepped into the alley, noting how Maya's stance subtly shifted to maintain distance while keeping escape routes clear. That was beautiful. Also terrifying, but beautiful. It's just exercise. That was combat training at a level most military units would envy. "Where exactly did your grandfather teach you to move like that?" Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying his face in the dim light. Something in his expression must have convinced her to drop at least one layer of defensive pretense. "My grandfather was Li Wei Chen. He taught traditional kung fu in San Francisco's Chinatown for 40 years. I started training with him when I was 4 years old." Alexander recognized the name immediately. Li Wei Chen had been legendary in martial arts circles, a master who'd trained champions and whose school had produced fighters who dominated international competitions. "Li Wei Chen was your grandfather? The Li Wei Chen? You've heard of him?" "Anyone who's ever studied martial arts has heard of him. He was considered one of the greatest masters of his generation. His school produced more champions than any other institution in North America." Maya's expression became guarded again. "Most people don't know that much about traditional kung fu. I studied Taekwondo in college. Not seriously, but enough to recognize expertise when I see it. Your grandfather was famous for only accepting students who demonstrated exceptional dedication and natural ability. He made exceptions for family. I doubt that. Li Wei Chen was known for being harder on his relatives than anyone else. If he trained you personally, it's because you had extraordinary talent." Maya began gathering her things, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "It was a long time ago." "How long ago did you leave?" The question made her pause. "I didn't leave, I was sent away." "By who?" "My family. When I turned 18, they decided I needed to focus on more practical pursuits. Marriage, specifically. Traditional Chinese families don't always approve of daughters who prefer fighting to finding husbands." Alexander sensed there was much more to the story, but Maya's body language warned him not to push further. Instead, he took a different approach. "Are you hungry?" "What?" "It's 1:30 in the morning, you just finished a 10-hour shift followed by what looked like an hour of intensive training. I'm betting you haven't eaten anything substantial since lunch." "I'm fine. That wasn't the question. Are you hungry?" Maya hesitated. "Yes. I know a place, nothing fancy. Just good food and no dress code required." "Alex." "Not a date, just food. Two people who happen to be hungry at the same time, eating in the same location. No expectations, no agenda." "Why are you being so persistent?" "Because you're the first person I've met in years who challenges me to be more than just rich. You make me want to earn your respect instead of buying it." Maya looked at him for a long moment, weighing something in her mind. "One condition." "Name it." "No more questions about my past tonight. We can talk about anything else, but my personal history is off limits." "Deal." The diner Alex chose was a 24-hour place in Queens that served truck drivers, night shift workers, and insomniacs who needed comfort food at unusual hours. Maya seemed to relax as soon as they walked in. The casual atmosphere and working-class clientele apparently felt safer to her than elegant restaurants filled with people who might have expectations or judgments. They found a booth in the back corner, and Maya ordered pancakes with a side of bacon while Alex requested coffee and pie. She ate with genuine hunger, and Alex found himself fascinated by this glimpse of Maya without her professional mask. "Can I ask about Kung Fu without it counting as personal history?" he ventured. "Depends on the question." "The form you were practicing, what style was it?" "Northern Shaolin with elements of Wing Chun. My grandfather believed in combining traditional techniques with practical applications." "How many hours a day did you train?" "When I was younger, 4 to 6 hours after school, more on weekends. Training wasn't optional in our family." "Do you miss it?" Maya paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Miss what?" "Competing. From what I understand, someone with your background would have been eligible for national teams, international competition. I was never interested in competition." "Why not?" "Because Kung Fu isn't a sport. It's a way of life, a philosophy, a means of protecting yourself and others. Turning it into entertainment diminishes its purpose." Alex found himself leaning forward, drawn in by the passion in her voice. "But surely your grandfather would have been proud to see you compete at the highest levels." "My grandfather cared more about character than trophies. He used to say that the most important victories happen when nobody's watching." "Like 3 nights ago in the restaurant." Maya met his eyes directly. Exactly like 3 nights ago. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Alex noticed Maya gradually relaxing. Her shoulders lost their defensive tension, and she began to make occasional eye contact instead of constantly scanning for exits. "Your turn," she said eventually. "For what?" "To answer questions. Fair is fair." "What do you want to know?" "Why restaurants?" "You could have gone into any business, but you chose hospitality." "Why?" Alex considered the question seriously. "Because food brings people together. It's one of the few industries where success depends on making people genuinely happy, rather than just separating them from their money. That's surprisingly idealistic for a billionaire." "You think billionaires can't be idealistic?" "I think it's easier to be idealistic when you can afford the luxury of principles." "That's cynical even for you." Maya shrugged. "Experience teaches cynicism." "What kind of experience?" She gave him a warning look. "That counts as personal history." "Sorry, force of habit." They finished eating as the first hints of dawn began lightening the sky outside. Alex found himself reluctant to end the evening, which had been the most genuinely relaxing conversation he'd had in months. "Can I drive you home?" he offered as they stood to leave. "I can take the subway." "It's 5 a.m. and you live in Queens. Let me drive you." Maya hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." Alex's car was a modest BMW rather than the Ferrari or Lamborghini Maya had expected. She raised an eyebrow as he opened the passenger door for her. "Not what you were expecting?" "I figured you'd drive something flashier." "I save the flashy cars for when I need to intimidate people. Tonight I just want to get you home safely." During the drive to Maya's neighborhood, they talked about books, movies, and music. Neutral topics that revealed shared interests in classic literature and obscure foreign films. Alex discovered that Maya was far more widely read than her job suggested, with opinions on authors and subjects that indicated formal education well beyond high school. When they reached her building, a converted warehouse in an industrial area that was slowly gentrifying, Maya turned to him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Thank you for dinner, and for not pushing when I asked you not to. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove I'm not completely terrible." "Jury's still out on that," Maya said, but she was smiling. "Can I see you again?" "Alex, not a date, just this. Conversation with someone who doesn't want anything from me except honesty." Maya studied his face in the dim light from the dashboard. "Why is this so important to you?" "Because you're the first person I've met who makes me want to be worthy of their respect." Something shifted in Maya's expression. A brief glimpse of vulnerability before her defenses snapped back into place. "I have to go." She was out of the car before Alex could respond, disappearing into her building without looking back. But as he drove home through the empty streets, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had changed between them. What he didn't know was that Maya was standing at her window, watching his taillights disappear and wondering why a man who could have anyone was so determined to understand someone who'd spent years making herself invisible. And what neither of them realized was that Marcus Webb, Alex's business partner and oldest friend, had been following them since they left the restaurant, taking photographs and making plans that would soon threaten everything they were beginning to build together. V2 mes recente copier publicar 4. Marcus Webb had been Alexander Thornfield's business partner for 8 years, best friend for 12, and secret enemy for the past 6 months. As he sat in his penthouse office reviewing the photographs his private investigator had taken of Alex and Maya, his jaw tightened with barely controlled rage. Maya Chen wasn't just some waitress who'd caught Alex's attention. She was the granddaughter of Li Wei Chen, the legendary kung fu master whose dojo Marcus had desperately tried to join as a teenager, only to be rejected for lacking the discipline and character Li Wei demanded from his students. The old man had looked right through Marcus, seeing the anger and entitlement that drove him, and had dismissed him with words that still burned 15 years later. "You seek power, not wisdom. Find another teacher." Now Li Wei's granddaughter was threatening to derail the most important business deal of Marcus's career. Webb Industries stood to make $40 million from the sale of Alex's restaurant chain to a consortium of international investors, a deal that would only proceed if Alex remained focused on business rather than getting distracted by romantic entanglements with inappropriate women. Marcus picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd hoped never to use. "It's Webb. I need you to handle a problem." The voice on the other end was cold and professional. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that requires someone to disappear for a while. Permanently, if necessary." While Marcus was making arrangements to destroy her life, Maya was experiencing something she'd thought was impossible. Hope. For the first time in 4 years, she'd allowed herself to imagine a future that didn't involve hiding, running, or constantly looking over her shoulder. Working at Le Bernardin had become more than just a job since Alex started visiting regularly. He'd kept his promise not to pressure her about dates, instead finding excuses to be in the restaurant during her shifts. Sometimes he reviewed inventory reports from a corner table. Other times he met with suppliers in the dining room. Always, he treated her with the same respectful professionalism he showed his executives, never using his position to make her uncomfortable. But it was the small gestures that broke down Maya's defenses. The way he remembered she preferred Earl Grey tea over coffee during her breaks. How he'd arranged for the staff parking area to have better lighting after learning she walked to the subway alone after late shifts. The fact that he'd quietly increased security at all his properties following the restaurant robbery, not to protect himself, but to ensure his employees felt safe. Maya was cleaning tables after the lunch service when Henry approached with an expression of barely controlled fury. "Maya, I need to speak with you privately." Something in his tone made her stomach clench with familiar dread. She followed him into his office, where he closed the door and turned to face her with devastating news. "Immigration Services received an anonymous tip this morning claiming you're working under false documentation." The blood drained from Maya's face. "What?" "They're conducting a full investigation into your employment status. Legal documentation, background verification, the works. If there's anything irregular about your papers." Maya sank into a chair, her mind racing. Her documentation was legitimate, but it wouldn't survive deep scrutiny because it had been created by people who specialized in helping victims disappear from dangerous situations. Immigration investigators would eventually trace the documents back to their source, exposing not just Maya, but an entire network that helped women escape abusive families and arranged marriages. Who would do this? Henri asked gently. Maya already knew. There was only one person who had both the motivation and resources to destroy her life so thoroughly. Someone who'd been watching her closely enough to know exactly where to strike. "I have to quit," she said quietly. "Maya, no. We can fight this. Alexander has excellent lawyers. I can't involve Alex in this. If immigration connects him to my case, it could damage his businesses, his reputation. I won't let that happen." "Then what will you do?" Maya stood up, her decision made. What I've always done. Run. Henri grabbed her arm gently. You don't have to live like this. Whatever you're running from, there might be another way. You don't understand. The people I'm running from don't give up, they don't forgive, and they have enough money and connections to destroy anyone who tries to help me. That evening, Maya packed her few belongings into a single duffel bag. The same routine she'd performed in 3 different cities over the past 4 years. Leave no trace. Take nothing that couldn't be replaced, disappear before anyone realized she was gone. She was almost finished when she heard a key in the lock. Only one person had a key to her apartment, the landlord, and he'd given Maya explicit instructions never to use it except in emergencies. Maya positioned herself behind the door, ready to fight if necessary, but the person who entered was Alexander Thornfield. Maya? Henry told me what happened. We need to… Alex stopped short when he saw the packed bag on her bed. No. You shouldn't be here. You're leaving. I have to. No, you don't. We can handle this together. I have lawyers, investigators, resources. Alex, stop. Maya's voice was firm but not unkind. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't. Someone is targeting you to get to me. That makes it absolutely my fight. Maya turned to face him fully, and Alex saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. This wasn't fear or uncertainty. This was the look of someone who'd made a final decision and wouldn't be swayed by arguments or emotions. You think this is about you, but it's not. This is about my past catching up with me, just like I always knew it would. What past? Maya, talk to me. Whatever this is, we can handle it. I can't tell you. Why not? Because you're a good man who believes problems can be solved with money and determination. But some problems don't have solutions. Some people can't be fought or reasoned with or bought off. Sometimes the only option is to run. Alex moved closer, his voice desperate. I'm not letting you disappear from my life because someone sent an anonymous tip to immigration. It won't stop with immigration. Maya's voice was flat, emotionless. Next, it'll be the IRS. Then it'll be criminal investigations based on planted evidence. Then it'll be threats against people I care about. It escalates until everyone around me is in danger. Who is it? Who are you so afraid of? Maya was quiet for a long moment, weighing how much truth she could safely share. My family. Your family is threatening you. My family sold me. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Alex felt his knees buckle slightly as the implications hit him. When I was 17, my parents arranged a marriage to a man I'd never met. Zhang Wei, heir to a shipping fortune, 43 years old, with a reputation for acquiring beautiful things and discarding them when he got bored. The bride price was $2 million. Alex's hands clenched into fists. Jesus Christ. I refused. My grandfather supported my decision and offered to let me stay with him, but my parents threatened to destroy his school, ruin his reputation, and have him deported if he interfered. So I agreed to meet Zhang Wei, thinking maybe I could convince him I wasn't suitable. Maya's voice became distant, as if she were recounting someone else's story. He didn't want a wife. He wanted a possession. Something beautiful and exotic to display at social functions and abuse in private. When I continued refusing, he had me kidnapped and held until the wedding. How did you escape? My grandfather's training. Zhang Wei's men underestimated what a 17-year-old girl could do when properly motivated. I fought my way out, took money from Zhang Wei's safe, and disappeared. That was 5 years ago. 4 years, 7 months, 12 days. Zhang Wei has been looking for me ever since. Not because he loves me, but because I embarrassed him. I made him look weak in front of his associates. In his world, that's unforgivable. Alex felt rage building in his chest like a physical fire. Why haven't you gone to the police? With what evidence? Zhang Wei's operation is completely legal on paper. Arranged marriages aren't illegal if both parties appear to consent. And my family would swear I was mentally unstable, that I ran away from a loving home and a generous suitor. But you're an American citizen. You have rights. I'm a Chinese-American woman with no money, no connections, and no proof of crimes that were carefully constructed to appear legal. Zhang Wei has teams of lawyers, politicians in his pocket, and enough money to make problems disappear permanently. Alex understood now why Maya had been so resistant to his interest. She wasn't playing hard to get or protecting herself from heartbreak. She was protecting herself from a genuine threat that could cost her everything, including her life. So you've been running for 4 years. New city every 18 months. New identity, new job, new life. It worked until someone figured out who I really am. Someone like Marcus Webb. Maya's head snapped up in surprise. What? My business partner. He's been acting strange lately, asking questions about you, taking calls he won't explain. I thought he was just being protective of the business, but now… Alex, you have to stay away from me. If Marcus is involved, then Zhang Wei knows exactly where I am. Coming here puts you in danger. I don't care about danger. Well, I do. Maya's composure finally cracked. I care about you getting hurt because of me. I care about your business being destroyed because you tried to help someone you barely know. I care about good people suffering because I was selfish enough to let myself care about someone again. Alex reached for her, but Maya stepped back, shaking her head. I'm leaving tonight. Don't try to find me. Don't hire investigators or use your connections. Just let me go and forget we ever met. Maya, promise me. Alex looked at her for a long moment, seeing the fear and desperation she was trying so hard to hide. I can't promise that. Then you're going to get us both killed. Maya grabbed her bag and headed for the door, but Alex blocked her path. There has to be another way. There isn't. What if we expose him? What if we go public with what he's done? With what proof? My word against his? He'll destroy me in court and come after you next. What if we make sure he can't? Something in Alex's tone made Maya look at him more carefully. What do you mean? Give me 24 hours. Don't run. Don't disappear. Give me 1 day to show you there's another option. Alex, this isn't a business problem you can solve with strategy and resources. Maybe not. But I'm not giving up on you without a fight. Maya stared at him, torn between hope and terror. Everything in her experience told her to run immediately, but something in Alex's eyes made her want to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was another way. 24 hours, she said finally. But if you can't find a solution that doesn't put you at risk, I'm gone. Deal. As Alex left her apartment, neither of them noticed the van parked across the street or the long-range camera capturing their every move. Marcus Webb was already implementing the next phase of his plan, and 24 hours might not be nearly enough time to save them both. Alexander Thornfield had built his business empire by being prepared for any contingency, but nothing had prepared him for the phone call that woke him at 4 a.m. Mr. Thornfield? This is Detective Martinez, NYPD. We need you to come to Bellevue Hospital immediately. Maya Chen was found unconscious in an alley in Chinatown 3 hours ago. Alex was dressed and in his car before the detective finished explaining the circumstances. Maya had been discovered by a jogger, beaten unconscious with no identification and no obvious motive for the attack. Only the emergency contact card in her wallet, which listed the restaurant, had led police to Alex. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of rage and self-recrimination. He should have insisted she stay with him. He should have provided better security. He should have recognized that 24 hours was too long when dealing with people willing to kidnap and abuse teenage girls. Detective Martinez met him in the emergency waiting room, a tired-looking woman in her 40s who'd clearly seen too much violence in her career. She's stable but unconscious. Concussion, 3 broken ribs, extensive bruising. Whoever did this knew exactly how to hurt her without leaving obvious evidence of torture. Has she said anything? She hasn't regained consciousness since we found her. But Mr. Thornfield, there's something else. We found this in her jacket pocket. Martinez handed him a photograph that made his blood freeze. It showed Maya and Alex leaving the diner 4 nights earlier, but Maya's face had been circled in red ink with a message written on the back in Chinese characters. Can you read this? Martinez asked. Alex stared at the foreign writing, feeling helpless. No, but I know someone who can. An hour later, Henri Dubois arrived at the hospital with Dr. Kim Nakamura, a linguistics professor from Columbia who specialized in Chinese dialects. Dr. Nakamura studied the photograph with growing concern. This is written in traditional Chinese, but the phrasing is archaic. Formal. It says, "The runaway bride will return to her rightful husband, or all who shelter her will suffer the same fate." Rightful husband? Detective Martinez looked confused. Alex explained Maya's situation as concisely as possible, watching Martinez's expression shift from skepticism to grim understanding. So this Jiang Wei character had her beaten as a warning? Not Jiang Wei directly, he's too smart to get his hands dirty. But his people, yes. We'll need evidence to build a case. I might be able to help with that. Everyone turned as Marcus Webb entered the waiting room, his expression perfectly crafted to convey concern and support. Alex felt his suspicion crystallize into certainty. "Marcus, how did you know to come here?" "I heard about the attack through police contacts. I came as soon as I could." "Police contacts? Alex, we need to talk. Privately." Against his better judgment, Alex followed Marcus to a quiet corner of the waiting room. Marcus glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard before speaking in low, urgent tones. "This has to stop. Now." "What has to stop?" "Your involvement with this woman. She's dangerous, Alex. She's brought violent criminals into our lives, threatened our business, and now she's putting everyone around her at risk. Maya is the victim here. Maya is a magnet for trouble. And as long as you're associated with her, that trouble becomes our trouble." Alex studied his partner's face, seeing something he'd never noticed before, a coldness that went deeper than business concerns. "You did this. What? You're the one who called immigration. You're the one who told Jiang Wei where to find her." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Alex, you're emotional right now. You're not thinking clearly. Answer the question, Marcus. Did you contact Jiang Wei?" "I contacted people who could verify whether this woman was who she claimed to be. Yes." The admission hit Alex like a physical blow. "You son of a bitch. I protected our business interests. This woman was using false documentation, lying about her background, and manipulating you into a relationship that could have destroyed everything we've built. By selling her out to the man who tried to force her into marriage. By ensuring that dangerous criminals didn't become our problem." Alex felt rage building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Losing his temper now wouldn't help Maya, and it might prevent him from learning the full extent of Marcus's betrayal. "What exactly did you tell Jiang Wei?" "I told him where she was working and living. Nothing more." "And what did he offer you in return?" Marcus hesitated, and Alex knew he'd found the real motive. "Jiang Wei owns 40% of the investment consortium trying to buy our restaurant chain. He made it clear that his participation was contingent on certain obstacles being removed." "Obstacles? You mean Maya?" "I mean distractions that were preventing you from focusing on business." Alex felt the last of his illusions about his partnership and friendship with Marcus crumble into dust. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since I realized you were serious about pursuing her." "Alex, this deal represents $40 million in profit. $40 million you were willing to throw away for a woman you'd known for less than a week. So you decided to have her beaten and threatened. I decided to remind her that some situations can't be fixed with good intentions and deep pockets. I thought she'd take the hint and disappear on her own. But she didn't. No. She came to you for help, which forced more direct measures." Alex looked at the man he'd considered his closest friend for over a decade and realized he'd never really known him at all. Marcus had always been ambitious and calculating, but Alex had assumed those traits were balanced by loyalty and basic human decency. He'd been wrong. "The partnership is over. Alex, don't make emotional decisions you'll regret. The only thing I regret is trusting you." Alex's voice was deadly quiet. "You have 24 hours to remove your belongings from our offices. After that, security will escort you from the premises. You're making a mistake. Without my connections, your expansion plans will proceed without you, or they won't. Either way, you'll have no part in them." Alex turned to leave, but Marcus grabbed his arm. "This won't end here. Jiang Wei won't stop because you fired me. If anything, you've made the situation worse. Then I'll deal with Jiang Wei directly." "With what?" "Good intentions? Jiang Wei has been acquiring women like collectible art for 20 years. He has politicians, judges, and police commissioners in 3 countries on his payroll. You think your money and your American lawyers scare him? Alex pulled free of Marcus's grip. We'll find out. As Alex walked away, Marcus called after him one last time. She'll get you killed, Alex, and for what? A woman who spent 4 years lying about everything, including her name? Alex stopped. What do you mean, including her name? Marcus smiled with cold satisfaction. Maya Chen isn't her real name. She's been using false identities for so long, I doubt she remembers who she really is. The woman you think you're protecting doesn't even exist. Despite everything he'd learned about Marcus's betrayal, this final revelation hit Alex like a knife to the chest. He'd fallen in love with someone whose name he didn't even know. But as he returned to Maya's hospital room and saw her lying unconscious, her face swollen from the beating Zhang Wei's men had given her, Alex realized it didn't matter. Whatever her real name was, whatever lies she'd told to protect herself, the woman in that hospital bed was someone worth fighting for. Doctor. Nakamura was still examining the photograph when Alex returned, her expression troubled. There's something else, she said quietly. The calligraphy style is very specific. Whoever wrote this was educated in traditional Chinese schools, probably in Hong Kong or Taiwan. But there are subtle characteristics that suggest American influence. What does that mean? It means this message wasn't written by Zhang Wei or his associates in China. It was written by someone Chinese-American, someone who learned traditional writing but has been living in America for many years. Alex felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. Someone like Maya's family, possibly, or someone working for them here in the States. Detective Martinez looked up from her notes. Mr. Thornfield, we're going to need a complete list of everyone who knew about Ms. Chen's location and situation. If this Zhang Wei has people operating in New York, we need to identify them. Alex nodded, but his attention was focused on Maya, who was beginning to stir in her hospital bed. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually sharpening as she recognized where she was. Alex? Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm here. They found me. I know, but you're safe now. Maya tried to sit up, wincing at the pain from her broken ribs. No one is safe. They'll keep coming until they get what they want. What if we give them something else they want more? There's nothing Zhang Wei wants more than recovering his lost face. What about $40 million? Maya looked at him in confusion, and Alex explained Marcus's betrayal and the business deal that had motivated it. As he spoke, Maya's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something approaching hope. You're talking about destroying their expansion plans. I'm talking about making it more expensive for Zhang Wei to pursue you than to let you go. Alex, these people don't think like Western businessmen. Face and reputation matter more than money. Then we attack his face and reputation. Dr. Nakamura cleared her throat. Actually, there might be a way to do both. Everyone turned to look at her, and she continued with growing excitement. Traditional Chinese marriage contracts from Zhang Wei's generation often include very specific clauses about family honor and business reputation. If Maya was contractually promised as a bride and then refused to fulfill that obligation, Zhang Wei might be legally entitled to recover not just her, but compensation for the loss of face. How does that help us? Alex asked. Because those same contracts usually include clauses about the bride's family's obligations. If Maya's parents accepted money for a marriage that was never consummated, they might be legally obligated to return that money with interest. Maya sat up straighter despite the pain. $2 million, plus 4 years of interest and penalties, which in traditional Chinese business law could easily amount to $8 or $10 million, Dr. Nakamura confirmed. Alex felt hope building in his chest. So if we can prove Maya's parents breached their contract, Zhang Wei might be more interested in recovering his money from them than pursuing Maya. Maya looked between Alex and Dr. Nakamura, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. But we'd need proof of the original agreement, documentation of the money transfer, evidence that my parents acted in bad faith, all of which might be available through legal discovery if we file the right kind of lawsuit, Detective Martinez added. For the first time in 4 years, Maya Chen began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to run anymore. But first, They would have to survive Jiang Wei's next move, which was already in motion. The confrontation came sooner than any of them expected. Jiang Wei arrived in New York 18 hours after Maya regained consciousness, bringing with him a team of lawyers, security personnel, and enough political influence to make Detective Martinez's investigation suddenly disappear from official channels. But Alexander Thornfield had spent the previous day making preparations of his own. "You requested this meeting," Jiang Wei said as he entered the private dining room of Le Bernardin. He was exactly what Alex had expected, impeccably dressed, coldly handsome, with the kind of casual arrogance that came from a lifetime of getting whatever he wanted. "I trust you have something meaningful to discuss." Alex stood to greet his guest, noting the two bodyguards who positioned themselves near the exits. "I have a business proposition. I don't conduct business with people who harbor stolen property." "Stolen property?" Alex kept his voice level despite the rage building in his chest. "You mean Maya?" "I mean my contractually obligated bride, who has been unlawfully kept from fulfilling her family's agreement." "The woman who was kidnapped and held against her will, you mean?" Jiang Wei's expression didn't change. "Different perspectives on the same situation, but I'm not here to debate ancient history. I'm here to recover what belongs to me. Maya doesn't belong to anyone. Maya Lee belongs to my household according to a legally binding contract signed by her parents and witnessed by appropriate authorities. The fact that she ran away doesn't invalidate that agreement." Alex noted the different name but filed that information away for later. "Contracts can be broken. Not this one. Too much money was exchanged. Too many reputations are at stake. Maya will return with me to San Francisco, where the delayed wedding ceremony will finally take place. And if she refuses, she won't refuse. Not after her family explains the consequences of continued disobedience." Jiang Wei gestured, and one of his associates placed a tablet on the table. The screen showed video footage of an elderly man Alex recognized as Li Wei Chen, Maya's grandfather, being led away from his dojo in handcuffs. "Immigration violations," Jiang Wei explained calmly, "discovered during a routine audit of his school's financial records. He's currently being held for deportation hearings." Alex felt his hands clench into fists. "You son of a bitch. I'm a businessman protecting my investments. Maya's grandfather will be released and all charges dropped as soon as she fulfills her obligations, if she continues to resist." Jiang Wei didn't need to finish the threat. The message was clear: comply or watch the man who'd raised her suffer the consequences. "There's another option," Alex said quietly. "I'm listening. You received $2 million from Maya's parents as part of the marriage contract. According to traditional Chinese business law, if the bride's family breaches that contract through deception or bad faith, they are obligated to return your investment with appropriate penalties." Jiang Wei's expression sharpened with interest. "Go on. Maya's parents lied to you. They claimed she was willing to marry you, but they knew she would refuse. They took your money under false pretenses, which constitutes fraud under both American and Chinese law. Even if that were true, recovering money from her parents doesn't address the matter of face. I was publicly humiliated when Maya disappeared. That requires personal compensation." Alex had anticipated this argument. What if the compensation was substantial enough to demonstrate that you were the wronged party? What if everyone involved understood that you were generous enough to release Maya from an obligation her parents had fraudulently created? How substantial? $8 million immediately, plus public acknowledgement that you were deceived by Maya's family and that your decision to release her demonstrates wisdom and compassion rather than weakness. Jiang Wei leaned back in his chair, considering the offer. $8 million was significantly more than he'd originally invested, and it would allow him to save face while eliminating a problem that had become increasingly expensive to maintain. Who would provide this compensation? I would. And in return, Maya goes free. Completely free. No further contact, no claims on her, no threats against her family. You drop the charges against her grandfather and leave all of them alone permanently. You're willing to pay $8 million for a woman you've known for less than 2 weeks? I'm willing to pay $8 million to ensure that a good person doesn't spend the rest of her life running from a situation she never chose. Jiang Wei studied Alex for a long moment, his calculating mind weighing the costs and benefits of the proposed arrangement. There would have to be documentation, legal agreements that protect both parties. Of course. And Maya would have to sign paperwork acknowledging that she was never coerced, that her refusal to marry was her own choice, not the result of outside influence. Alex hesitated. He could see the trap in Jiang Wei's demand, documentation that would shift all blame to Maya and her family while absolving Jiang Wei of any wrongdoing. "She'll sign whatever's necessary," Alex said finally. "Then we have an agreement." The legal paperwork took another 4 hours to complete, with teams of lawyers from both sides crafting documents that would satisfy American courts, Chinese business traditions, and Jiang Wei's need to emerge from the situation with his reputation intact. Maya signed the papers in Alex's office, her hand shaking slightly as she acknowledged that her 4-year nightmare was finally ending. Li Wei Chen was released from immigration custody before the ink was dry on the contracts. But it was the conversation that followed Jiang Wei's departure that Alex would remember most clearly. $8 million, Maya said quietly. "That's more money than I'll earn in my entire lifetime. It's less than I spend on art in a good year. That's not the point, Alex. You barely know me. You know I lied about my name, my background, probably dozens of other things. Why would you risk so much for someone you can't trust?" Alex sat on the edge of her hospital bed, choosing his words carefully. "What's your real name?" "Li Mei Hua. Maya is the American name I chose when I started running." "Li Mei Hua," Alex repeated slowly. "It's beautiful. It means beautiful plum blossom. My grandfather said I was born during plum blossom season, when winter is ending and spring is about to begin. Is that what this is? The end of winter?" Maya looked at him with eyes that held 4 years' worth of pain and hope. "I don't know. I've been running for so long I'm not sure I remember how to stay in one place. We could figure it out together. Alex, I don't have anything to offer you. No money, no connections, no social status. I'm a waitress with a fake identity and enough emotional baggage to fill a cargo ship. You have something worth more than all of that." "What? You make me want to be worthy of you." Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "You realize this is crazy, right? We've known each other for less than 2 weeks. People don't fall in love that quickly in real life. Don't they? Do they?" Alex leaned closer, his voice soft but certain. "I don't know about other people, I only know about us." "And what do you know about us?" "I know that I'd rather spend one day being completely honest with you than a lifetime being fake with anyone else. I know that watching you fight those gunmen was the moment I realized I'd been sleepwalking through my life. I know that the thought of you disappearing terrifies me more than any business deal I've ever made." Maya felt tears gathering in her eyes. "Alex, I know you're scared. I know you've been hurt by people who were supposed to protect you. I know you have every reason not to trust someone like me." "Someone like you?" "Someone rich, privileged, someone who's never had to fight for survival or run from anything more dangerous than a hostile takeover." Maya touched his face gently, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "You're wrong about that." "About what?" "You think you don't understand survival, but you do. You survived having Marcus as a best friend for 12 years without letting him destroy your basic decency. You survived growing up rich without becoming entitled or cruel. You survived having everything handed to you without forgetting how to work for something that mattered." "Like what? Like this, like us?" Alex captured her hand and held it against his cheek. "Is there an us? I don't know, but I'd like to find out. Even though I'm completely crazy for falling in love with someone I met 2 weeks ago, especially because you're completely crazy for falling in love with someone you met 2 weeks ago." Alex leaned down and kissed her softly, and Maya felt something inside her chest that had been frozen for 4 years finally begin to thaw. When they broke apart, she was smiling despite the tears streaming down her face. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now you recover from your injuries. Then you quit your job as a waitress." "I need to work, Alex. I can't let you support me." "I'm not talking about supporting you, I'm talking about offering you a position that matches your actual qualifications." Maya looked confused. "What qualifications?" Alex smiled. "Henri told me you speak 4 languages fluently, have sommelier-level wine knowledge, and understand fine dining service better than people who've been in the industry for decades. I'm expanding into international markets next year. I need someone who can handle cultural complexities and high-stakes negotiations. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a career if you want it. Maya stared at him in amazement. You're serious. Completely serious. Though I should warn you, the position comes with some unusual requirements, such as the person in this role would need to attend a lot of business dinners, travel frequently, and occasionally accompany the CEO to social functions. That sounds suspiciously like dating. Dating with excellent health insurance and a 6-figure salary. Maya laughed despite herself. You're ridiculous. I'm practical. I need someone I can trust in that position, and I'd like to spend more time with the woman I'm in love with. This solves both problems. What if it doesn't work out between us? Then you'll still have a career you're qualified for, and a reference that will open doors anywhere in the hospitality industry. Maya considered the offer, hardly able to believe her life was changing so dramatically. I have one condition. Name it. I want to visit my grandfather before I make any major decisions. I need to talk to him about what happened, make sure he's really safe. Of course, we'll fly to San Francisco tomorrow. I'm not letting you out of my sight until I'm absolutely certain Zhang Wei honors his agreement. Maya smiled. That could take a while. I'm hoping it takes forever. Li Wei Chen was waiting for them at the small airport outside San Francisco, looking older than Maya remembered, but unmistakably her grandfather. When he saw her walking toward him with Alex, his weathered face broke into the first genuine smile Maya had seen from him in years. Mei Hua, he said softly, using her real name as he embraced her. You look like yourself again. What do you mean? For 4 years you've been carrying the weight of other people's choices. Now you move like someone who's remembered she has choices of her own. Maya introduced Alex, who bowed respectfully and addressed Li Wei in carefully practiced Mandarin. The old master smiled at the effort and responded in English. Your pronunciation needs work, but your intentions are clear. You care for my granddaughter. Very much, sir. Good. She deserves someone who sees her value. Li Wei looked between them with knowing eyes. The winter is ending, Mei Hua. Are you ready for spring? Maya looked at Alex, who was trying to follow the conversation despite the language barrier, and felt the last of her defenses finally crumble. Yes, grandfather, I think I am. 6 months later, Maya Chen, officially Li Mei Hua Thornfield after their quiet courthouse wedding, stood in the kitchen of their newest restaurant in Hong Kong, coordinating with chefs who spoke 3 different dialects of Chinese and marveling at how dramatically her life had changed. Alex found her there as the evening service wound down, reviewing inventory reports that most people would have delegated to assistants. Any regrets? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. About what? Marrying a man who thinks he can solve every problem with money and determination. Maya leaned back against his chest, smiling. That depends. Any regrets about marrying a woman who can take down armed robbers but still checks the locks twice before going to sleep? Not even one. Good. Because I'm told this job comes with some unusual requirements. Such as? The person in this role needs to attend a lot of business dinners, travel frequently, and occasionally kiss the CEO when he's being particularly charming. Alex turned her around in his arms, grinning. That does sound challenging. I'm up for it if you are. Mrs. Thornfield, I thought you'd never ask. As Alex kissed his wife in the kitchen of their Hong Kong restaurant, both of them remembered that sometimes the best love stories begin with the most unlikely meetings, survive the most impossible obstacles, and end up exactly where they belong.